I'm female, 20, and ever since my parents separated and my mom walked out on us, my relationship with my dad, male, 50, has gotten worse and worse. Instead of parenting me as an 8-year-old who suddenly didn't have a mom, dad turned to drinking 24/7 and left me to raise myself. I was unable to make friends because we lived in a crappy airstream, and Dad didn't do a single thing to help us save or get us out of our situation. And things only got better when I started parenting him as I turned into a teen. I did all the chores and housework and slowly introduced my father to AA through a friend of mine in school. That slowly allowed him to get out of a rut and start providing for us financially, and that's pretty much all I can view him as, a financial caregiver. While both of us have tried, there hasn't been any way for us to build a proper bond, and Dad never tried to apologize for his behavior when I was a kid or even talk about that period of our lives. Thankfully, my grandparents have always been there to support me. Once they knew how bad things were for me and Dad, they moved across states and helped me feel less pressured by the responsibilities I had. Although they knew the full story and have called Dad out on his behavior, it hasn't changed his attitude. Even after facing flack from his parents, Dad still won't talk about how he went wrong. At this point, it's just how he is, and both I and my grandparents know that. They try and make up for it by, actually being there for me and forming a proper bond with me, unlike Dad. 2 years ago, my dad started dating someone from his work who had a son my age. Eventually, he got married to Laura, female, 52, and her son Kent, male, 20, was my new stepbrother. From the get-go, I didn't get along with either of them, since both of them viewed me as a villain for not being super close with my dad. They weren't there when things were tough, and Dad gave him a different picture of how things were. So that generated a ton of friction between us. I genuinely felt thankful when I moved out for college, since it meant that my interactions with my new stepmom and stepbrother were at a minimum. I threw myself into campus life, made a ton of friends, and even started earning money through part-time jobs in my quest to be as independent as possible. However, my dad still paid for my college fees, and that was something I wouldn't be able to cover even with my side hustles. My grandparents were the only people I regularly spoke to from my family, and I visited them and spoke to them way more often than Dad did. During my semester breaks, I would usually go spend time with my grandpa or just pop in for weekends with Dad. Kent was off to college as well, so I rarely saw him around the house. But Laura was always there to make my time at Dad's place kind of icky and awkward. She was always pushing me to see my dad's side of things and expected us to become a picture-perfect blend family with no issues. The last time I visited, though, the whole house had some nervous energy. Kent was also there with some girl I didn't recognize, and he looked extremely sheepish. Dad and Laura had a lot of private conversations with him and this girl, who turned out to be Kent's girlfriend, and any time I was around the house, it looked like they were one step away from an argument. I didn't care about what was going on, though, until I found out through my dad. He asked me about how my college was going and what my plans were, and I filled him in, feeling more than a little surprised that he was bothering to interact with me. Then I found out why. He started by saying, "OP, it's clear that you're super talented, but I'm not sure if college is the right place for you." When I asked him what he meant, he said, "Well, there's a position open at the company I work at. Maybe it would be best for you to get some real-world experience under your belt and then rejoin college a few years later. You can freeze your degree, can't you?" I replied, "Yeah, Dad, I can, but I don't want to. What's the issue?" That's when I found out that apparently Our family was going through some money troubles, and my college fees were the biggest expense. Dad wanted me to drop out and work because it would bring in some income for me and reduce the expenses for the family. This revelation came out of left field for me because I had no idea that things were that bad. I didn't want to leave my college life, but at the same time, I knew it was wrong for Dad to foot the bill if money was tight. I did agree and had an email ready to be sent to the dean explaining my situation. Looking back on it, I thank my stars that I didn't send that email though, because I found out through sheer luck that our family was doing absolutely fine in the money department. Dad just wanted to use my college fees for the down payment for Kent's house. My stepbro was scrolling on Zillow, and when I asked him about it, he said, "Didn't you know? I got my girlfriend pregnant, and Mom said that it would be best for me to live in a house so that we could raise a proper family together. The whole family is chipping in for this, and I'll pay them back later." I immediately hollered for Dad and asked him whether this was the reason I had to drop out of college. After beating around the bush, he finally said, "Yes, OP, and I didn't want to tell you because you don't treat Kent like your brother. I knew you would say no." I was so hurt by how Dad and Laura were willing to throw away my education and force me to work just so that Kent could deal with the consequences of his actions in a cushy house. I called my grandparents and asked to stay with them for the remainder of the semester break. Obviously, they were livid at what Dad did. And I guess my grandpa had enough. He took me with him to his lawyer and added a codicil, lawyer speak for an addendum, I guess, which removes Dad as a beneficiary of any sort and makes the inheritance go directly to me. It turns out that my grandparents have saved up quite a bit of money. Now, I know this was petty, but I asked Grandpa if I could get a copy of the will and show it to Dad. He was also pretty sick of his son's behavior, and so he agreed. After a couple of weeks, I went over to Dad's and gloated about how his actions have cost him an inheritance, and also said that my grandparents were willing to see me through college, basically negating any need I had for him in my life. He was shocked and immediately called his parents. When they confirmed what I had said, he was crestfallen and said that he didn't want to see me anymore. Now, I kind of feel like an a-hole for my actions and burning all bridges with my dad. Should I not have shown him the new will? Update 1. I spoke to a few of my friends from college about it after cooling down, and I do think that it was unnecessary for me to go to Dad and gloat like that. Even my grandparents feel a little remorseful, and it didn't give the sense of closure that I had expected. Dad has not contacted either me or his parents and seems to have just lost all touch with us. I don't even know whether I should view that as a good or bad thing. The emotional baggage of our past and the fiasco with Kent do make me feel like he was too toxic to bother any kind of relationship with. At the same time, I can't get the look on his face when I said I don't need him anymore out of my head. Am I being a pushover or too soft? I don't know. I guess I'll have to live with the choices I made. Update 2. A lot of things have happened fast, so I'll go over them in order. First, Dad came to his parents' house and asked to speak to me privately. Then he apologized to me for not being there when I was a kid, and even more for lying to me about money. He said that he would like to pay for my college if I was okay with it. Naturally, I was a bit taken aback by his full 180 degree and wasn't comfortable with him paying for my college just yet. Next, he called his parents into the room and said that he was filing for divorce from Laura. We were all shocked at this and asked him why. And he said, "She was the one who was forcing me to buy Kent a house. She made me choose between you and her, and I'm ashamed to say I tried to have both by lying to you about money problems. OP, I know I haven't been the best dad, but seeing you cut me off has made me realize how important you are to me. It was clear that my dad had an epiphany of some kind, but I wasn't ready to fully trust him. My grandparents were glad to see their son on the right path, though, and they readily accepted him. Thankfully, my dad understood that he'd have to put in the work before I could rebuild a relationship with him, and he didn't immediately push for forgiveness. Update 3. For everyone DMing me, yes, I was able to go back to college without any issues. My grandparents have been super supportive, and Dad is currently going through his divorce with Laura. I speak to him and spend some time with him, and things between us are slowly improving. I think he wants to change, and I'm not going to hold on to my past to deny a possible bond with my dad. It won't be easy, and we'll both have to grow together. But I feel like it's going to be possible for the first time in my life. YTA, but only for the gloating. In everything else, you are not the AH. I understand treating your dad with caution, especially considering how he was so quick to listen to his new wife, as opposed to his daughter. Even if he realized he was wrong, there's still a lot of groundwork that needs to be done before he can become trustworthy. NTA, your dad was willing to screw you over to keep his wife and stepson happy. The only thing that concerns me is that he had his epiphany after knowing he wasn't receiving any inheritance. IMO, you shouldn't have mentioned that at all and seen how he reacted. Next story. I'm 16, female. My school recently held a bake sale for our school sports teams, expecting we wouldn't actually make any money. The day before the bake sale, our vice principal decided that we would be assigned a dessert, and of course, we got the short end of the stick. The football team were chosen to make chocolate chip cookies, while we were told to make raisin cookies. My friend Miranda, 17, female, and her mom spent hours that night making the cookies from scratch. They ended up making 52 cookies in total. Being that we were chosen to make raisin cookies, nobody bought anything we made, and so we made no money. Our school sports funding is to be split equally among all the teams, but 90% of it goes towards the football team. The vice principal and all the teams agreed we would get 50% of the profit we made from the bake sale, and the rest would go towards a local charity. This bake sale was a way for us to pay for our next going away game. Initially, we were all going to make different things. But of course, our vice principal did what she did, and we made no money. I knew this was going to happen, so at the end of the school day, I took all the cookies Miranda made and started selling them around my neighborhood, priced $1 each. 30 people bought cookies, and my dad gave me $12 just for the rest of the cookies. They took me 4 hours to sell. The next day at practice, I gave Miranda $15 and put the rest towards our trip. At lunch, we were all talking about how Miranda can make other desserts and how we can go around selling them in our neighborhoods, which can probably pay for our whole trip, and how we don't need to pay the school at all. Of course, one of the football guys overheard us and reported us to the vice principal. She later called us into her office and told us if we didn't hand over 50% of the money to charity, our team wouldn't be allowed to play in our next game. I told her no, and that she was the reason we didn't make any money in the first place, and if she let us keep our original plans, we would have made more money. She told me how dare I speak to her that way, and if I didn't hand over the money, she would call the police and our parents for theft. But I still insisted no. We had to stay at our school till our parents came, and she had the school officer stand behind us the whole time we ended up handing all the money over, and not 50%. And we were told our team was suspended from playing until further notice, and that I was to attend Friday detention for a week. That night, my mom screamed at me about how I was entitled, disrespectful, and needed to grow the frick up. I just ignored her as usual. I texted Miranda that night apologizing, and she told me what I did was kind of rude. So, AITA? Edit. Thank you for the advice, everyone. After talking with my dad and Miranda, I came to the realization that me yelling at the vice principal wasn't going to solve any issues, and I was only making things worse. I should have handled this better. So that's my fault. On Monday, I'm going to apologize and let this go. Everyone is saying go to the local news station and things like that. But this is quite a small issue, so I'm only encouraging Miranda to go to the school board about the vice principal taking her money away. Other than that, I'm staying out of this. Edit 2. Some people think I just stole the cookies or snatched them out of Miranda's hands. I didn't. I asked her, and she said it was fine. NTA, if they weren't sold at the bake sale, I don't think they have to go to the same place. You were just trying to get your team more money. I'm kind of curious as to why Miranda is mad, though. Were your other teammates upset? NTA, this is why I never participated in school bake sales. Because they always took the money for football and none to the arts, such as the band, such as the choir. If the items did not sell in the bake sale and then you were told to take them home, they're yours to do with what you want. If you guys wish to sell them and just use it for your team, I see no problem in it. Next story. I, 18 NB, have been working at a plant nursery store for about 3 years now. I really enjoy my job, even though I'm only being paid minimum wage. The store is quiet most of the time. My manager is super chill, and my coworkers are all fantastic. I've never had a problem with anyone up until now. One of my coworkers, Brian, 30-ish male, and I worked in the same area of the nursery and talked, bantered regularly since he was hired last summer. We have some of the same interests and got along really well. Brian is disabled. I don't know which disability or disabilities he has, but they seem to be cognitive based. He has an attendant who can only work 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. on weekdays, and once I started school and switched to only working Sundays, we didn't see each other until I graduated. On my first day back full time, he was very excited to see me and hugged me when I came in. I don't like being touched at all for personal reasons, so I was a little out of it and didn't say anything. This was the first time he's tried to hug me too, so I wasn't expecting it. We talked a bit afterwards and parted ways. A little later into the day, we ran into each other and Brian hugged me once more. This time I pulled out of it and asked if we could high five instead, since I know he does that with other coworkers. He looked dejected, but said all right, and we high-fived to seal the deal. An hour after that, he hugged me once more, and when I said, "Oh, no thanks," he replied, "I don't care," and held on to me before kissing me several times on the cheek. I got out of the hug and had a bit of a panic attack in the washroom before going home early. I really don't like being touched. The next day, same thing. I tried several times to communicate and practice our high five technique, but he showed no interest and kept hugging. I spoke with his attendant, she hadn't been present when this happened, and asked if she could speak with him, but she brushed me off and said he hugs her all the time. I explained why I didn't like it, but she didn't seem to care. The whole situation ended up being extremely taxing on my mental health, and I dreaded going to work the next day. When it eventually happened again the following morning, I went straight to my manager and explained the situation. He said he understood completely and that Brian's behavior was unacceptable, etc. My manager ended up talking to him and the attendant and gave them some kind of warning. Afterwards, the attendant took me aside and said I shouldn't have reported Brian because he didn't mean anything by hugging, kissing me, and that's just how he communicates affection. I said he still invaded the boundaries I set and that I was uncomfortable regardless. She called me cruel and discriminatory before walking away. AITA? Edit. Thank you all so much for your comments, advice, and insightful feedback. This morning, I informed my manager of what Brian's attendant told me after their meeting. He said he will investigate the matter with her agency. I'm working the registers indoors in the meantime since I didn't think it would be good to have Brian move instead. I made sure to wave to and greet him when I came in, and he waved back. His attendant seemed to be ignoring me. NTA, go back to your manager and report what the attendant said to you. The attendant's job is to help Brian get by in the adult world, and that includes abiding by basic workplace rules like don't touch your coworkers, especially if they've asked you not to. If he's not capable of following this rule, he doesn't get a pass for his disability and he gets fired. And quite frankly, that means the attendant needs to be fired too. NTA, he was completely ignoring the boundaries you set and making you uncomfortable. Brian acknowledged that you didn't want to be hugged when he said, I don't care, and hugged you anyways, meaning he knew you didn't want it, but chose to disregard that. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.